Hello and welcome to Tar Heel Teachers at Home. I'm Marlo Artis. I'm the moderator of the program. Tar Heel Teachers at Home is an interview series focused on engaging North Carolinians in conversations around education. Each week, I'm happily joined by a wonderful panel of educators, each one representing a particular subsection of education. We'll start our introductions with our elementary school co-host.
Hello, my name is Amy Tart, and I teach fourth grade ELA and social studies for Clinton City Schools. I'm in my 8th year of education, and you can find me on Twitter at Cards for Scholars.
I'm Ben McKinnon. I teach middle school chorus in Gaston County Schools, and this is my 8th year teaching.
Good evening. My name is Mika Twietmeyer. I teach science at Riverside High School in Durham. This is my 14th year in education, and you can follow me on Twitter at Micah J. Hunter.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Yvette Mason. This is my 28th year in education. I have taught before and still teaching as well, but currently I am in the role as an Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources in Wayne County Public Schools. And you can follow me on my Twitter handle at Yvette S. Mason.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Mason. We're really glad to have you with us. For this episode of Tar Heel Teachers at Home, we are chatting with North Carolina Representative Frank Iler, who represents District 17 in the House. He is here to discuss a variety of educational topics as we continue to unpack the budget, Leandro, and more. Please welcome Representative Iler to Tar Heel Teachers at Home.
Should I introduce myself?
Sure.
It's just Frank Iler, and I'm in Brunswick County, beautiful beach territory, way south of you guys. And I wish you had one of our Teachers of the Year. I hope maybe you'll do it another time. I am not saying it's going to unpack the budget. It's right here, and it's about 1,400 pages, give or take. And I do have some summary information on education and on salaries and on a lot of other subjects. And I think this is more of a question and answer format, or I'll be glad to chat a bit. The education budget, as most of you know, is the biggest part of the general fund budget. General fund budget is the one that's financed by income taxes and sales taxes for the state. The transportation budget is separate from the general fund budget. It's financed by your taxes at the gas pump and when you buy a new car, when you get your DMV fees and so forth. So I've been involved in the transportation budget, but I've been on the education committee almost the entire time I've been in Raleigh, which we'll say it's about a decade. Seniority does have some advantages. I do have some input on all the budgets, primarily transportation, but also the others. I've advocated for years. I'm not pandering tonight. I was married to a high school English teacher. In fact, she taught Governor Cooper, and you imagine that's a few years ago in Nash County. But the education budget for this year, which we're well into it, as you know, is $15.4 billion, which is almost 60% of the $25.9 billion budget. And then next year it's 15.9, it's $500 million higher. It's about 59% of the $27 billion general fund budget. So it's by far our biggest piece, and takes the longest to work out the budget kinks, you might say. This year, capital expenditure jumped into the mix, and we are spending $1 billion in capital money. Let's see, it's $800 million from the lottery for school capital projects, and another $200 million to the public school capital fund just from general fund, and now $80 million into a newly created school repair and renovation fund. That's in addition to the additional $1.5 billion above the base budget for the 2-year period. I think the court said something about 1.7. And of course, the court doesn't allocate money, appropriate money. We do, but we appropriate 1.5 billion extra over this 2-year period. So the education budget got a lot of attention. It took months for our leaders and the governor to come to a consensus, as you saw. The good news is, a few years ago, we passed that if you didn't have a budget, you kept operating on the same budget that you already had. And we also passed the mini budgets last time, which enabled us to pass an education budget and a transportation budget and, that sort of thing. And so, once the budget was vetoed, this year it was not vetoed, but it was very late. And much as I hate it much as anybody. I'd start turning red when I was talking to my colleagues about it. So I must have been upset. But anyway, that's an overview. Like I say, it's been over $25 billion budget for a while, and the education part has been around 15 billion for a few years. And to give you an idea, that's more than justice and public safety, and Health and Human Services, and all the others put together. And the rest of the budget's about 40%. So, and so we run the rest of the government on that. Obviously, salaries is a huge piece of that. That's one reason it's a big number.
Right. And you have advocated. I appreciate you sharing all of that background information, kind of giving us some good context. So you've advocated for several years for what you call the 3 T's: teacher pay, teacher assistants, and teaching fellows. So Representative Iler, where would you say we are now with those 3 areas compared to where we were in 2009 when you first joined the General Assembly?
We are in pretty good shape, because when I joined General Assembly, the budget that I came in and voted no in 2009 froze teacher pay. And by 2013-14 budget, we unfroze it and started increasing different levels. We started the early teachers, and then went on to the middle, and then the upper. Don't call it the range. What's the name for it? The salary scale. So each budget we tried to put more in. I'll never forget the senior budget chair about 3 budgets ago. I won't mention his name. I walked in his office and shut the door. I said, okay, I want $250 million more in teacher pay. He said, we don't have any money. His name happened to be Dollar. I said, well, if you keep this up, we're gonna call you 50 Cent. So his last name was Dollar, but he's no longer in the House right now. He is working for the Speaker, and is a great budgeteer, as you might say. But he and I had that conversation behind closed doors then. I guess it's late enough to make it public. But I was not a happy camper. Teaching assistants were reduced, and I was not happy. I visited all the schools in my district in 2013, and in particular in the elementary grades, I was almost astounded and shocked at how well and what they have to do in organization and discipline, not just in paying attention. That's where the teacher has to have the eyes in the back of their head, and they need that extra pair of eyes, at least K through 3, at least, if not 4. And we've had people sharing teaching assistants, and I've been pushing for that a long time. And the year they cut out teaching fellows, I was ready to quit. But it's coming back. It's coming back on. I think the problem was, and don't quote me, I know this is going to be public, but there's somebody about the political organization that was running it. They thought was political. So I didn't know. I was a freshman back then, so I didn't know much. But I didn't quite get that. But it's coming back slowly. There's like several other things that I was upset about, like the film credits now coming back as film grants, stuff like that. That I don't always agree with my party on everything, and we were in the majority. We got a lot that we wanted, but some of those things really bother me. Being, married to an English teacher, I met her, and we married. Our second marriage is when she had taught 24 years in Nash County, and she was making $24,000, or a little bit over. And so I got a pretty good idea that we need to work on that. And I think in the minimum 35,000 at this point, it goes up to about 50 something for the median. So, but that was in the 90s, and I know that 24,000 is not the same as 35 now, but that was 24 years of experience she had, and she was highly respected. And she taught all the AP classes and all that, and it was amazing. But anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
We appreciate that. What questions do we have for Representative Iler? We do have
go ahead.
Jump in with questions.
I was going to ask your thoughts on school calendar flexibility. I did see that back in April, there was a vote and you courageously voted the one no. So I was kind of wanting to know some of your opinions for that no, and then what your thoughts moving forward with school calendar flexibility was.
Well, we are sent there to represent our constituents, and a lot of our constituents are in the hospitality business at the beach. And every time you shrink the summer, it impacts our economy at the beach, as people probably know. Very logical. But I'm all for flexibility as long as, and I loved 3 months of summer when I was a kid, and I haven't gotten away from thinking, you can do things. My mama was a teacher, actually third grade, Amy, way back. And she didn't, my dad said he needs to go play baseball. Mama says he needs to sit down here and read all summer. So, but I got out and played a lot of baseball too when I was a kid. So, but I read like Hardy Boys and the biography books and all the ones that we had available in our libraries back in the dark ages. And we didn't have the devices to read on. We actually had to hold a book in our hands. And so, and I still believe in that so in fact, we had an open dictionary in our home raising our kids. And my dad had the same philosophy. I had world books, and my dad's 3 favorite words were look it up. And when I had a question, my kids had a question about something, I'd point to our humongous dictionary, tell them to look it up, So that's the way a great man once said that the biggest influence on education is the priority on education in the home. And I've always believed that. I don't want to take up all your time on my soapbox. Please ask more questions.
No, thank you.
Did I answer your question? I'm
Sure.
not sure I answered your question. Okay.
Well, I was gonna add to that. Do you think that maybe if there was more flexibility in the calendar, that if schools across the state, rather than all of us going to school on Monday the 25th, and then the whole industry of hospitality like shutting down pretty much on the 25th, if there was more flexibility of some schools start earlier so they end earlier, so people are starting their summers earlier, and then some people are starting later and so their summer ends later, that could actually spread those tourism dollars over more time, rather than, because like you can only fit so many people in a hotel and then you're full and then they go somewhere else. That's my only thought with that, is if with some more flexibility, like the mountains, like they might want to start earlier because they're going to get more snow and they want to be out earlier in the year. That's all I have to say on that. I don't know what you think to that idea, or if that would fly, but
well, that's a great question, because in 2020, we learned a big lesson. We shut down the beaches basically and the short-term rentals in March and April. And everybody got real creative and started booking into September and October. And we had the longest season we've ever had in our neck of the woods down here. And they learned that parents can get creative and say, hey, why don't we have school from the beach? You know, although I don't know what the impact of virtual is going to be long term, but that year it was amazing. I mean, people rebooked into the fall, and they had one of the best years they ever had for the whole year.
Yeah.
March and April were horrible, but as far as business, and horrible for people being locked down. But
Yeah.
once they got out, they really wanted to get out, and they booked into the fall. So I think we all learned a lot. That's, I guess, a silver lining, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
We learned a lot in 2020, and I think those lessons are going to be good for us from now on. Yeah.
So I'd love to jump.
I have to agree with you. There may be some flexibility.
Yeah.
On both ends of the thing, both in the school calendar and in the hospitality industry down here. So I think, again, we learned a lot.
Yeah, I'd love to jump into teacher pay as well for a moment. The starting salary this year, as you said, is $35,000, and then it does incrementally increase all the way until year 15, and at year 15 it stops at $50,000. And now, yes, a new budget is passed every year, but as teacher today looking at their future, it doesn't increase again until year 25. So that's 10 years without a pay raise. And then after that, you're done. 25 up, you're done. And I have a lot of teacher friends that are on year 15, 16, 17 and are saying to themselves, why am I staying here? Why am I going to stay in this job that's not even giving me a true cost of living raise, with this year's true rate step being 1.3% as an average for this year? Inflation was 6% this year. Why stay in teaching is a very difficult question to answer. And with that, I have our 8 largest school districts, or most of our largest: Wake, CMS, Guilford, Winston, Cumberland, Union, Cabarrus, and Gaston County. Within those counties, there are 1,731 teaching positions open as of 30 minutes ago when I looked at all their websites. That is 1,731 classrooms that have a substitute teaching our children because we can't get teachers. And I know there's not a one-stop fixes all, but I know that we have a huge problem keeping veteran teachers because they're jumping ship to other careers earlier than finishing out their 30 years because they're not getting cost of living raises. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a multi-layered question, but we can't control inflation, but I believe in keeping up with inflation as much as possible. We're supposed to be budgeting based on inflation and growth in population. And if that's the case, then we should be keeping inflation in our biggest salary group, which is the education group. And so I've advocated for that right along. Again, I don't control that the other 60 members in the majority, 60 plus members in the majority. I don't control the Senate, obviously. They think they control us, but anyway, there we go. But yeah, I think we ought to keep it with inflation. I've advocated for that. I know one thing with the way the retirement works, and I learned that when my wife retired, but the last 4 years, they average to calculate that retirement, which in her case, she just gotten her master's, and back then that was a great thing. I don't know if it came back this time. I know that the substitute came back. I've got notes here. The substitute ended, that you don't have to pay a substitute this year. I don't know if you're aware of that. That the teacher only has to pay a substitute. Was it $50 or whatever it was a day? So we ended that. And there's some bonuses in there, but again, to address the veteran teachers, I think we need to quit worrying about that retirement factor. I know the Senate was, inside baseball, the Senate was hot on that issue. Every time you give a raise in the upper level, then you're impacting that forever. It might be retired 25 years or something, so, but I don't think we need to be worried about that. We need to make that something to strive for. And as Dr. Mason hopefully will have a great retirement. I know she's 28 years, I heard. And again, I think we made it easier to hire veteran teachers and come back. Is that part of the thinking these days? I don't know. The veteran teachers can actually come back and not lose their retirement. I think that's something that had to change also.
Yeah, they have to be gone 6 months before they can come back, I believe.
That's it.
But even then, we're not getting, at least like in my school, we're not getting the people to even finish their 30 years, much less to finish their 30 and then come back. Is the big problem. There.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that to some degree. In another facet, I live 4 miles from the South Carolina border. We compete with Horry County, and those people pay 9% sales tax over there. And part of that is their supplement, I believe, in Horry County. And Brunswick has a supplement, but I don't believe we compete with theirs. I don't know the numbers, but I don't think we compete with theirs. I've heard stories about a principal that could have gotten 10,000 more. But the good news is she loves Brunswick County, so that's good news, I guess. But I know I address that. I'm all for keeping up with inflation. I guess that's the bottom line, and I've pushed that, as I mentioned before.
Well, I do want to jump in and ask a question. Thank you, Ben, for asking about the teacher pay. And as we get into recruitment season, we are definitely trying to recruit teachers to our county. Wayne County is the 21st largest school district in Wayne County. And so I sit right behind some of those big districts that are also trying to recruit teachers. I also sit in a military community. Wayne is home to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, so we receive lots of military wives coming into Seymour Johnson. And so I would like to ask about the master pay, because we certainly are in competition across the United States with that master pay on that teacher scale, and acknowledging those teachers that are coming into our area that have a master's degree. However, if they do not have that master's degree by a certain time, that we're not able to pay that. So has there been any discussion around recapturing the master pay for our teachers in North Carolina?
Every 2 years at least, and sometimes every year there's that discussion. And I've promoted that. My wife got a master's that was not in the English area. It was in counseling, and they never let her be a counselor, but so they kept her in the classroom. But she could handle her teenagers a lot better after she had the counseling. But she got the credit for the master's pay, and then now I think they put it back. If you get a master's in your area, I don't know if that went through or not, but that was part of the discussion. It did not. Okay. But as part of our discussion, we're version 6 here, and within each version of the budget, things came in and fell out. So I can't keep up with all of those. But again, the master's is something I've promoted for obvious reasons, personally, my wife, and just the idea that recruiting is a big deal. Not just is it in your area or not as you get it, and if you're already employed, but as you said, recruiting. And again, I hadn't even thought of that aspect, but that's obviously a big one, and it'll be in front of my mind the next time that we have to have that discussion.
Yes.
The good news, the budget was signed. The good news, the budget doesn't have every single thing we want in it. So again, education is where it's at, and everything we can do. One thing, by the way, that led to some of these picking this apart over the last 10 years by some people is that accountability. How do you say, well, here are good teachers, they should get more, and here these are not so good, whatever that scale or term is, and they shouldn't get a big raise. So does everybody get 5% or 10%, or does some get 2 and some get 10? I mean, again, in business, that's kind of what you have to do, evaluate those who work for you. I know you being an assistant principal, I believe is that the title? Assistant superintendent, excuse me.
Right.
That you have to be part of that. And so, but the thing is about the recruiting, that's a big factor as far as the masters. And I've been for that myself, and it didn't impress my caucus like I hoped it would. But you know, we're slowly working back to some of these things. But the accountability was one thing that said, well, how can we have more accountability? Well, I'm not sure. So let's don't just go towards 0. Let's go more towards 5 or 10%. And while we're figuring that out. So
do you have a thought on why the General Assembly chose to keep national boards pay? Has never went away. It's always been there. If we can afford the 12% for national boards, I could go get mine tomorrow and get a pay bump. Why do you think the General Assembly goes for the national boards pay raise rather than a master's degree? I know.
Then don't give them any ideas now.
Well, but I mean, my only thinking is that somewhere along the line, the national boards company that produces national boards and does all the adjudicating for it, that I assume that they're lobbying for that to stay, and maybe our university systems have not lobbied for master's degrees to be honored. I don't know what your thoughts. That's the only reason I can think of why you would honor a national board over a master's degree. What are your thoughts, Representative?
Well, without giving you the entire political conversation, I think the lawyers that were in charge, we definitely have different backgrounds, right? I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers that were in charge of a lot of those decisions within the legislature wanted to do away with both, I believe, and then get this accountability going. How is it really affecting what your performance? Well, we had enough teachers, just a few, enough teachers on both sides of the aisle that said, wait a minute, you can see that the national board says that you've gotten to a certain level as a teacher. The master's isn't necessarily in your field, so you may or may not. And there's not enough evidence there. So that was the argument for one or the other. But again, I think if you get a master's, you've proven something, whether it's directly in your English or math or whatever it is. And again, I'm not pandering here. I'm kind of, that's my attitude. That's me speaking, not for everybody in the legislature. There's 169 other folks we have to deal with too. But I'm not for blank checks. Anything the department wants in Raleigh, I'm not for writing them a blank check. But the local level, we need to support this, like, well, it's not no more than 100%, but 100%, So, but I'm not sure the department is always on the right track, But that's what I heard when I first came in the minority. But,
yeah. I hate to monopolize. I feel like I'm talking a lot. You mentioned the capital fund for I assume new schools and buildings and repairs. I'm very thankful. I just left a 80-year-old school building into a brand new facility that was funded with local school bonds through Gaston County Board of Commissioners and Gaston County School Board. Overall, though, we have very crumbling schools all across the state. And a lot of these smaller counties, like where I'm from originally, Cherokee County, they don't have the tax base to be able to pass a bond referendum. So how are those capital funds being dispersed to counties who really, really need new school buildings? They've got buildings with asbestos. They've got buildings that are crumbling, that are too small. How are we making sure that those get to the places that need them the most?
Well, building schools and keeping them under repair has always been a county function. And again, we did a lot for low wealth counties. I didn't get into the details on that, but we're doing a lot to help the low wealth counties have supplements for their teachers, which most of them don't, as well as they can apply for the grants under this capital money. And it is spelled out in the budget to some degree. And I know that the low wealth counties got a lot of attention. And there's a big list in the budget. It's Senate Bill 105. And if you got a couple of days to surf through it, you can find all those lists of everything, including some of the specific. My community college, which I served as a trustee, got $15 million. 15, not 50. $15 million of a huge amount. 400 million we put into building and repairs in community colleges, and another $1 billion in the university system. And like I say, a lot more money than before to the counties. And again, the county governments have always done that building, but this is to jumpstart some of that. And the low wealth counties are finally getting more attention. You know, everybody uses Fort Bertie with 6 schools and, 4,000 people or whatever, but there are a lot of counties that can use a lot of help. I think we've started paying attention to that in this budget. And I know the governor had a hand in that. They talked for months between the speaker, the president pro tem, and the governor. And I know they all had a hand in it. We're not going to take all the credit, but he sent a budget over. The Senate sent it to us. We improved it tremendously, and then we sent it back. And the budget that came out was very close to what we did. Well, we had guys that was just hot on the Capitol. We had a long, I forget how many years. My colleague has been a teacher. He was right in the middle of it. So I think the House had a great budget, and this budget is a lot of what we wanted, but obviously not everything. So I'm sorry, I get kind of excited sometimes on some of these issues, but it's almost as fun as transportation with potholes and stuff like that.
I wanted to ask you about your connection with a lot of the bills you introduce are about the environment and natural resources, as well as I know you're very interested and passionate about education. And I was wondering how those two interface together and how you think education should be connected to sharing information about the resources in particular counties, especially counties and areas like yours where aquaculture and things that like niche agricultural markets that not everyone knows about are crucial to our state's economy.
Wow, that's a good one. I guess basically, I remember I first got introduced to the community college here, for one thing, using that as an example. And the high schools are doing a lot of the same thing. But the community college had a turf grass academy practically, and they taught all these golf course superintendents what to do. Now they switched to aquaculture, and now the Cape Fear Community College and UNCW has really jumped onto that. So now we're moving on to workforce development for the new industries, which are finally paying attention to our areas, some of the rural areas for manufacturing and some of the high-end, high-paying jobs for change. So, and the environment, I mean, I want my sea turtle bill passed. I really do. The environment is key to what we do down here. I mean, and we train people, I hope, to take care of it and to do what we have to do to, don't put the poison on your golf course and don't dump stuff into our creeks and all. And we got a lot of money into the flooding issue. One of our towns lost a bunch of dams during, which the highways were the dams, the streets were the dams. And the DOT said, we're not putting it back. That way you're going to build a dam in front of the road, so the roads don't all wash out. So we had $14 million in the budget. I asked about that every day while I was up there. Where's my dam money? You know, so it stayed in, thank goodness. But the point is that we got new funds for beach renourishment, beach restoration, resiliency, and clearing out streams so that Robinson County doesn't flood like it did a few years ago every time. And snag and drag, they call it. Clearing stream, there's millions of dollars for resiliency in our lower streams, particular where we got beaver dams and tree trunks and everything clogging up the streams. So I mean, it all fits together. You know, I was in Boy Scouts, so I learned a lot, forestry and conservation and stuff there. And again, I think the schools can play a huge role. We've got several programs here in horticulture and things like that in our high schools in Brunswick County. And in fact, we just got a grant about 30-some thousand for one of our teachers at South Brunswick that's doing that sort of thing. They have an outdoor classroom and it's all about horticulture. I'm sorry, I can go on, take your whole time.
Thank you. No, that was great.
Getting excited about this stuff. And but need to talk to my senator about passing my sea turtle bill.
We appreciate your excitement, Representative Iler. We do have a couple of questions from our virtual audience. So at this time, Dale, you have the floor.
Hello, Mr. Iler. I hope you're doing well. My question is, I'd like for you to look into a crystal ball. There seems to be a lot of contention amongst the political parties, both at the state and federal level, you know, dealing with budgets and so forth. But given your best effort, your best guess looking forward, do you see contention moving forward, or do you think the mood or the stage has been set so that future budgets will help education in the way that you have spoken and other people before you have spoken?
Well, there's a couple of angles to that. First thing is contention. We saw what was happening last year. We came in this session in January of this year, and we saw what was going on the news every day. We made a conscious effort to get along this session. Minority leader, majority leader in the House, and I think the same thing with Senator Blue and Senator Berger in the Senate. We made a conscious effort we're gonna get along. We had 9 or 10 Democrats that would have voted on our budget to override if necessary. And that's not even secret, I don't think, anymore. But we didn't have to do that. We had 101 votes because they worked with the governor for 5 extra months. And everybody talked and, you know, kept certain things they wanted in and gave up a few things they wanted because somebody had a different idea. So, but we made a conscious effort in January of this year. We're not going to be like those guys in Washington. We're not going to do that. We got friends here. We're going to get along. And so you think that's blowing smoke, but it wasn't. I mean, that was a conscious effort. And the speaker, if he didn't say it from the in front of the House, he said it to us. And the minority leader, you know, was on board too. So the House particularly, I think, was more congenial than we've ever been. But the good news is we have more money. I always heard that if you got more money rather than not enough money, it's harder to get a budget finished. And sure enough, it took till November. But hey, we got it done, and we're not going to give up any federal money. We're not going to, you know, not going to lose anything. We're going to allocate it where it's needed the most. And we're a lot closer to the people than those guys in Washington. That's all I can say about that. So,
Thank you, sir.
Other questions from the panel?
I see Angela and Holly and Julie. I'm not sure I got everybody on here.
So, Representative, I do want to ask you about a very serious issue that we continue to face here in North Carolina. We're almost hearing reports almost every day in terms of firearms on campuses. In Charlotte, they just this year alone, they've had 21 guns on campus. Our state principal of the year, Dr. Ashburn, she had a gun on her campus today in Wake County. And it continues to be a problem. Even Representative Gerald Baker, Sheriff, the Wake County Sheriff, Gerald Baker, spoke to some lawmakers in terms of what can be done. So, are there any conversations in the General Assembly around this really serious topic of the enormous amount of firearms that are being found on our campuses?
Well, I've got mixed emotions on some of the way those things are framed, but I can tell you in Brunswick County, we have school resource officers, and that big black car in front of that school is a deterrent. Trust me. I mean, it's got to be. We haven't had an issue that I'm aware of in Brunswick County. Now, every county can't afford that. Small counties probably can't buy 5 or 6 cars, and like we bought 20 some. Charlotte probably can't buy 250. I don't know, but however many schools there are. But again, we've been very lucky. We're an average size county, and we've been very, very fortunate and forward thinking. And the day after Sandy Hook, the Monday after Sandy Hook, we went from resource officers in the middle of high school to every school immediately had a resource officer with the big black car and the armed resource officer, and they take special training now, and we actually finance some of that the last few years. They take special training to deal with students and faculty and be a team member in schools. Maybe Dr. Mason can help us understand how it's working over. Is it Wayne County? Yeah, Wayne County. I lived in Goldsboro 5 years. My wife taught after she retired in Rocky Mount. She taught a couple of years at the community college, the high school level, or the entry level English. She taught some of that. So I have a lot of fun with Majority Leader Bell, who's from there.
Yeah.
And we actually got our president from our community college from Wayne Community College, Dr. Gene Smith.
Right.
Okay, so did I answer your question, Marlo?
You did.
Okay. And you can't blame the gun, but you sure can deter the humans, that have got evil up here, and I think that resource officer in the big black car helps a lot as long as they're trained to deal with students. And in most cases, it's working great here. Our representative, Charlie Miller from Southport, who's a second representative here, started our resource officer program years ago. He's our chief deputy sheriff, and he started that years ago along with some other folks. And he has lectured across the state and maybe outside the state about how to implement that and fund it and everything. So there's things going on that I don't even talk about. Cameras, locked doors, cameras that push a button and the sheriff can see what's going on. You don't want too much intrusion, but the school can control most of that. But if something's going on, boom, the sheriff can see it, and his man is there, not down the street somewhere. And I asked one of the resource officers one day, I said, what happens if you need to run down the street? He says, I cannot leave here until I get a replacement. So somebody has to come cover for me to even run down the street and get lunch. Somebody's, if I have to run down the street and get lunch. So they've got to figure it out. and we just got to let them do their job. And you know, metal detectors, door locks, shelter in place. I mean, it takes all of it. You know, you just got to be ready. I mean, when I came along, you jumped under your desk because you might have an atomic war. You know, I forget what you call it, duck and cover or something. You know, that's how old I am. But you know, we've had fear a long time, but it's not the guns; it's the people that evil in the minds. They'll saw a movie the other night. The guy carried a big old knife. You know, kind of like Crocodile Dundee or something. But I mean, that's a weapon too. You know, and you can hurt somebody with a lot of things. Baseball bats. You know. So anyway, you kind of got my drift on that, but I'm all for school safety, and so is Representative Miller. And he's the one to talk to. You know how that's working. You know.
We appreciate that, and we appreciate you coming on the show, Representative Iler, and having this dialogue with us. And you have an open invitation to come back as you continue to advocate for the 3 T's.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I'm sorry the time's up. Darn, I want 45 more minutes.
You have to come back. We certainly welcome you. You have an invitation to come back. We would also like to thank our audience so very much for watching our show. We hope that you will engage us on our social media platforms. Please like our Facebook page. Please follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @TarHeelTeachers. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, tarheelteachers.com. And on all of our social media platforms, please use our hashtag #TarHeelTeachers so we can find all of your great comments. We'd like to thank our wonderful group of co-hosts for joining us for this conversation: Amy Tart, Ben McKinnon, Mika Twietmeyer, and Dr. Yvette Mason. We'd also like to thank our wonderful virtual audience, and we would like to thank our special guests for joining us, Representative Frank Iler from Brunswick County. We look forward to seeing you next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home. Go ahead, Representative.
You can contact your representative, ncleg.gov. We're all on there, and you can find our information right there.
And I wonder if everybody be just as responsive as you are. You're very responsive. We'll see you all next time on Tar Heel Teachers at Home.